Wherever you're down, out in the cold, faithless and dark, your story's untold. Come take my hand and walk there with me. I know a place where we can be free. There is a light shining for you, guiding your way, helping you through. When shadows and gloom are all that you see, we'll find a place where we can be free. From the mountain top down to the deepest valley, hear a voice calling you. It's the rising sun shining in the darkest valley. Can't you see you will be free? I have been far, I have been wide, searching for peace, somewhere to hide. Now I am free, open and pure, fearless and babe, I am secure. There is no dark that can't be lit. We'll find a way if we just commit. We are one. There is no them and us. Together we're strong. Together we're free. From the mountain top down to the deepest valley, hear a voice calling you. It's the rising sun shining in the darkest valley. Can't you see you will be free? Can't you see you will be free? You will be free.
Okay, good morning, you guys. We going go through chapter 12 in AR 735. That's what I'm hearing the echo. Okay, so like I was saying, we're going through AR 735-5, chapter 12. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. So, section 1, organizational, operational, and administrative scenarios, 12-1. This chapter provides procedures that must be followed to account for property losses under special circumstances not covered by previous chapters. Accounting for recovered property previously listed on DD Form 200. Property. Hold on one second. Property is often found after a flipper has been initiated to account for loss. When this occurs, follow the procedures in Flipper EUM and listed in paragraph 12-2 alpha through 12-2 echo. When the property is recovered before document, transaction, or voucher number is assigned to the DD Form 200, the initiator should, if some, but not all, the property is recovered, line through the recovered property identified in blocks 4 through 8 of DD Form 200 and initial the entries on all copies. Adjust the grand total in block A, the total cost. If all the property is recovered, close the flipper and e-flipper. If hard copy processes per Appendix C, destroy the document. When property is recovered after approving authority has assigned an inquiry or investigation number, but before the APO has adjusted property records and assigned a document transaction number or voucher number, the approving authority will, when some but not all items are recovered, attach a copy of the memorandum with APO's memorandum to the DD Form 200 as an exhibit and continue the investigation until DD Form 200 is completed. When all property is recovered, attach the memorandum with the APO's memorandum to DD Form 200 as an exhibit and cancel the DD Form 200. Notify the financial liability officer to discontinue the investigation and mark the original DD Form 200 canceled. The approving authority files the form to support the cancellation. When property is recovered after the APO has assigned a document transaction or voucher number to the DD Form 200, take the following actions. The initiator, the financial liability officer, appointing authority, or approval authority as appropriate will forward a memorandum to the APO directing the APO to reestablish accountability for the recovered property. So usually that's what happened, you guys. The flipper goes through, or statement of charges goes through, and the soldier is actually charged. So then you'll do the reestablishment memo. The memorandum will contain the investigation number, the document transaction or voucher number assigned to the original loss or damage destroyed, theft, and a listing of the recovered property by material number, description, serial number, and quantity. Attach the APO's response to the flipper as the exhibit. The APO will complete the following actions to reestablish accountability for recovered property. Reverse the transaction in the PSR, or for hard copy property records, reverse the transaction using the original document transaction number. Respond by memorandum to initiator, financial liability officer, or approving authority as appropriate when accountability has been reestablished. And the National Guard also provide a copy of the response memorandum to the USPFO to support adjustment to the equipment status report, including confirmation of transaction data from APSR. When property is recovered after the approving authority has made a final decision on financial liability, the approving authority will reopen the flipper and follow instructions per paragraphs 12-C and 12-2 delta. When an individual has been assessed with financial liability for those items recovered, determine whether the individual was assessed the total amount of the loss or 1 month's base pay as prescribed in paragraph 7-5. If the individual was assessed the total amount of the loss, the approving authority will forward a memorandum to the FAO requesting the respondent be refunded the amount collected for the recovered property. For example, if a assessed loss of $2,000 was collected and the individual base pay was $3,000, recovery of $500 of lost property will result in a refund of $500 to the individual, leaving a remaining $1,500 total loss. If the individual was assessed 1 month's base pay for a loss greater than that amount, refunds for the value of recovered property will only be made when the items recovered reduce the total loss to less than 1 month's base pay. The amount refunded would be difference between the amount collected and the amount of the adjusted loss. Total loss less the value of the recovered property. For example, if assessed loss of $10,000 collected 1 month's base pay of $3,000, the remaining loss to the government is $7,000. $10,000 total loss minus $3,000 collected. Recovery of $500 in lost property will not result in a refund to the individual, as the government still has $600 and $6,500 in total losses above the collected $3,000 from assessed liability. Refunds to the individual will only incur once the recovered property value reduced the amount of total loss to less than the collected 1 month's base pay. In the event a unit or activity has been inactivated, the approval authority in the active chain of command immediately above the inactivated unit or activity will take the action specified in paragraph 12-2 Charlie and 12-2 Delta, designated an active unit within the command to assume accountability for the property. Request disposition of the property per AR 710-4. Accounting for loss, damage, or destroyed property in a joint service environment. Property belonging to Army organizations taking part in joint exercises or operations will not lose its identity as Army-owned or National Guard-owned property. This paragraph prescribes actions to be taken when government property is lost, damaged, or destroyed at jointly operated military installations, activities, and operations. These installations and activities include those involving DLA, military assistance advisory groups, and similar installations, activities, and operations. Preparation of flippers. Responsibility at joint service installation activities and operations for preparation of flippers, listing property in the custody of personnel is as follows. Accountable or responsible Army personnel will prepare flippers for Army property in the custody of Army personnel or in custody of other than Army personnel as prescribed in Chapter 5. Accountable or responsible Army personnel will prepare flippers using DD Form 200 for losses of DLA property, including inventory stored at Army installation in the custody of Army personnel according to DOD 7014-R. Personnel of the issuing U.S. agency, department, or foreign government will prepare flippers or other administrative property accounting actions for all other non-Army property in the custody of Army personnel according to the procedures of the agency or foreign government. When Army property is loaned to other DoD services, a loan agreement between the loaning and the borrowing activity will be established prior to loan taking place per AR 700-131. The loan agreement will state the borrowing services responsibility for the return of the borrowed items, and in the event of a loss or damage, the borrowing services responsibility for the payment or replacement or repair costs. Designation of approval authority. Army property in custody of Army personnel or other personnel. Approval authority will be as prescribed in Chapter 5 of this regulation. Within a joint service organization or a contingency operation, the following criteria will be used to determine who the approval authority will be for flippers when Army property is lost, damaged, or destroyed. Individual must be a DoD military officer in a command position in the pay grade of 06 or above, or individual must be a DoD civilian employee in a supervisor's position in the grade of GS-15. Defense Logistics Agency property, including stored at Army installations in the custody of Army personnel. Submit flippers covering losses of DLA property in the custody of Army personnel to the Army Approval Authority specified in Chapter 5. The flipper is prepared using the instructions contained in DOD 7014-R. After action by the Approval Authority, forward the original and duplicate of DD Form 200 to the DLA Reviewing Authority specified in DLA instructions. Return a duplicate of the DD Form 200 with the confirmed action of the Reviewing Authority to the Approval Authority who took initial action upon the flipper. Navy and other government agency and department property in the custody of Army personnel, except as final recommendations for placing financial liability on Army personnel by Navy flippers or comparable documents of other government agencies and departments, if approved by official designated in regulations of the agency concerned to confirm such approvals. Provided the recommendations are based on findings meeting the criteria stated in Chapter 5 of this regulation. host foreign government property in the custody of Army personnel. Property of a host foreign government may be lost, damaged, or destroyed while in the custody of DA personnel. The host foreign government may submit documents with the request for collection to the commander, activity supervisor of the DA element of which the Army personnel are assigned. If so, the Army claims judge advocate will evaluate the request to determine the amount of financial liability to be assessed against the person concerned. Collection of financial charges. Personnel authorized to take final actions on FLIPA involving financial liability will initiate and follow up on the collection actions. The final action on the such FLIPA establishes the indebtedness of persons by administrative procedure for collection from other than service members and DA civilian employees. Notify the respondent in the same manner as used for service members and DA civilian employees per paragraph 11-3 of this regulation. Request payment in full for the amount due. Keep in mind that other agreement may be in place covering this process. If after 60 days from initial notification, the respondent fails to pay either the full amount due or installments, there is no indication that requests for reconsideration were filed. Send DD Form 200 to the FAO for referral to the Defense Finance and Accounting Service for collection assistance. The extent of liability of the Army for non-Army property is discussed in paragraph 12-3 Delta. Collection of financial charges imposed on Army personnel by FLIPAs covering Army property is prescribed in Chapter 11 of this regulation. Civilian employees against whom the charges are imposed may be indigenous personnel in overseas commands. Agreements may assist with foreign government concern. If so, overseas commanders will consider these agreements when collection action is required. The decision will be based on the advice of the claims attorney or staff judge advocate. On receipt of copy of DD Form 200 authenticated to approve a finance charge from DLA reviewing authority, the approval authority will refer the case to the Army Installation Claims Judge Advocate for collection action. When the commander activity supervisor of an Army activity receives a request for collection against Army personnel charged with loss or damage of property of another service, government department, government agency, or foreign government, the commander activity supervisor will refer the case to an Army Installation Claims Judge Advocate for evaluation and collection as appropriate. Liability of the Army for non-Army property. The Army assumes some degree of responsibility in taking control over and entering in its records as Army property loaned by other services, agencies, or departments of the government or of host foreign government. This is true unless a covering loan agreement or contract provides to the contrary. This responsibility may take the form of reimbursement to the lending activity, repair of damaged items at Army expense, or replacement in kind of lost or irreplaceably damaged items. Requesting reconsideration. Action to hold a respondent financially liable for the loss or damage of property is subject to the procedures for requesting reconsideration as set forth in paragraphs 11-13 and 11-14. Reciprocal agreement between the Army and Air Force for financial liability investigation of property loss. Service members of U.S. Army DoD employees and members of other services have a reciprocal agreement with the Army may have approved charges of financial liability involuntary withhold from their federal pay. This applies to former service members to the U.S. Army and DA civilian employees who have retired prior to a decision made on the assessment of financial liability. Payment is taken from the retiree's retirement pay unless the retiree makes other arrangements for payment that are acceptable to the Army. Withholding is by salary or administrative offset according to 5 U.S.C. 5514 for civilian employees and 37 U.S.C. 1007 for service members. Before individuals are held financially liable, they must receive notice and the opportunity to exercise their rights as listed in paragraph 11-8 alpha, 4 alpha through 11-8 alpha, 4 golf. In processing flippers, a situation occasionally develops where personnel of the Air Force are determined to be financially liable for the loss or damage of armored property and vice versa. The Army and Air Force have agreed that the action on and the routing of the DD-4200 will be governed by the regulations of the property owning service without regard to the service assignment, parent service of the respondent. All right, so it's whoever the property belongs to, you guys. So whoever the respondent, whoever was charged for the property, that's their chain of command will do the flip. When a financial liability investigation results in a finding that a member whose parent servant is other than when a financial liability investigation results in a finding that a member whose parent service is other than the property owning service will be held financially liable for the loss or damage of the property involved. Forward the flipper to the parent service flipper approval authority with jurisdiction to act on flippers concerning the member involved. The owning services financial liability investigation will contain the evidence gathered as a result of the financial liability investigation, the findings and recommendation of the financial liability officer, and the recommendations of the owning service appropriate flipper approval authority. The parent service approval authority will take action on the findings and recommendation according to the parent service financial liability investigation regulation. Collection action will be pursued under the parent service regulation. The parent service approval authority will take action to notify the owning service approval authority of the action taken on the flipper or to reconcile any differences in the anticipated action and recommendations of the owning service. Approval authority for property issued to a unit during major training exercises. During training exercises, flippers will be initiated immediately upon the discovery of government property being lost, damaged, or destroyed. The financial liability officer will begin the investigation by examining the damaged property and releasing it for turn-in or repair and disposition back to the owning unit. Every effort will be made to complete the investigation while the facts are fresh and responsible and knowledgeable persons are still present. Regardless of who initiates the flipper, it will be processed through the chain of command of the individual who had personal and direct responsibility for the property at the time of the incident. The exception to paragraph 12-5 alpha is when a support agreement allows a host installation or host ACOM, ASCC, or DRU to approve flippers through the proper administrative channels. Okay, you guys, so we're going to stop right there. 12-5, we're going to pick up again next week on 12-6. If you guys got any input on what I just went over, chime in on the conversation in the comments. Like I said, this is just special procedures, chapter 12, where they talk about like just special things that might happen. If you lend some property out to another unit doing training exercises, if you like joint service, hold on, what's the one we went through? The where is it? Accounting for loss, damage, or destroyed property in a joint service environment. Telling who's supposed to initiate those flippers and who's how it's gonna be routed. So that's all I got for today, you guys. Again, you guys want to if you guys want to check out my books, the website is up right now, you guys. So you guys can go to soldiertalk.com. That's SOULJATALK.com and check out the website. You guys want to be a guest on my podcast, you can book the dates on the website. And that's all I got for you guys, man. I'll see you guys next time.